Let's jump to this next story here and we'll get into what's going on with this stuff. The Washington Post. Career prosecutors recommend no charges for Matt Gaetz in sex trafficking probe. Investigators see credibility challenges for two main witnesses in a probe of the congressman's alleged past dealings with a then 17-year-old. In other words, there's no evidence. There's nothing. That's it. Just some people with no credibility making accusations they can't back up. And so the prosecutors are like, ain't nothing we can do about it. We'll see. They're saying maybe they'll still bring charges, but it would be extremely unlikely to do so considering what they're saying now. But here's what happened. They start the probe. Someone leaks information to the press, and then all of a sudden, it's law. The media just says it's happening, and that's what they do. So my question is, with everything we've seen with the FBI, the Washington field office particularly, going after their political rivals, how much of this was an extortion plot? How much of it was because let's just show you the context here. This is from Politico. Florida man gets 5 years in plot to extort Matt Gaetz' father. A U.S. district judge sentenced Stephen Alford to 63 months plus 3 years supervised release. The story? He went to the family and said, hey, I can make that all go away if you give me $25 million. So I'm starting to lean towards whoever set this up, the investigators, and then whoever was leaking it, they were all in on it.
What do you think from your information?
Yeah, I don't, to me, like, I don't have information. So like, I'm very careful. Like, I don't like to lob accusations or, at people where I don't have real information. So I will say that, my instinct was that it was true based on the coverage from every major paper,
Well, I believe them.
And what's that?
Well, I believe them.
Well,
at this point especially.
So, at the last, couple years of my life dealing with some of the things I've dealt with definitely has me questioning a lot more things. I'll say that. But, typically the Washington Post does a pretty good job,
Disagree.
It's my opinion that most
David Weigel fabricated a story and then they secretly edited it 6 months later and they never issued a public correction. He literally just wrote a fake story about the Seth Rich conspiracy, manufactured insane claims that made no sense. And then I actually get him on the phone, and he's at the Washington Post, and I'm like, you made this up. And he's like, okay. And then nothing happens. 6 months later, they go in without saying anything, and they alter it to clean it up, and that's it. No official correction, no public statements or anything. The Washington Post is just garbage. And that's just the easy example off the top of my head.
I'm sure there's plenty of examples
look,
everywhere. But
this is them right now saying no charges.
Yep. No, I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So who are these other outlets?
And I will say that if when all is said and done, it comes out that this guy is innocent. I mean, that's pretty terrible.
Well, he was always innocent.
But everyone's innocent until proven guilty.
Right. Exactly.
So
they just run fake stories in the press. What they play dirty games like these liberals tend to think that if you're accused of a crime, you're guilty of it. That's a terrifying reality.
Well, that is the way the media works, right? So there's been a huge dynamic shift where, it used to be that like journalists took a long period of time to get stories out, make sure that they had sources, confirmed all of them. Now, because of the age we're in, where everyone is creating news quickly, including like you guys, right? It is a race to get the story first, which often means that the story is inaccurate. And once somebody launches the story, everybody races to tell the same story, and you end up getting this confirmation bias.
But this is something different. I mean, this is people leaking information on a story that had no evidence or credibility.
Sure.
And then the media, especially leftist liberal outlets, running it as if it was true.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, let's be honest here. There's a lot of sex traffickers in Washington, D.C. There's no denying that.
There's a lot of sex traffickers everywhere.
Exactly. And it's important to note here that the FBI has been moving, according to the latest whistleblowers, agents off of those cases and moving them on to the January 6th cases. And when it came to this particular case, I did find it interesting because I do follow a lot of of these stories. I think they're important to talk about, especially when it comes to things like the DC Madam. That's a whole nother crazy story that if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you could go down a rabbit hole with. But I didn't find any evidence here with Matt Gaetz. I didn't see anything legitimate. I didn't see anything confirmed, so I kind of kept quiet about it. I waited as a journalist to see what was going to be happening, what was going to be developing here. But online, all over Reddit, there was #1 posts calling him a sex trafficker.
Sure.
But I haven't seen anything legitimate. I haven't seen any evidence suggesting this, but everywhere on social media, especially in leftist circles, he is automatically deemed now a sex trafficker, which I think is a little bit unfair, since of course there's no evidence providing this assertion, which was spread out by insiders from the government and then regurgitated by the corporate media to smear somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a bias against people you don't like. If you don't like somebody, it's very easy to believe bad things about them.
Exactly.
And and he's extremely far right, and is a continuous target.